I'm divorcing you and will move abroad with this person. A few months after the birth of our little daughter, while holding his mistress, my husband declared the divorce with an arrogant demeanor. A transfer with his mistress? Does he even understand what he is saying? I'll give you the house and we'll divide the assets. In return, you take care of the children and our parents. They are also your parents too since we were married. It's only natural for you to take care of them. While I was silently listening, my presumptuous husband dictated terms. As if he was doing me a favor. He wanted a divorce and still expected me to care for his parents who lived with us. Which infuriated me. What I couldn't forgive the most was his disregard for our child. If he insists, I have my own thoughts. I agree to the divorce. However, I refuse both your proposals. What? How are you going to live without the house or the assets? Are you stupid? My husband mocked me. But he doesn't know. I have an ace up my sleeve. Soon, he will realize who the real fool is. I am Rebecca. I work from home, living with my husband Dylan and our newborn daughter Sarah. Dylan used to be a reliable person. Before marriage, we traveled a lot. And we shared household chores after getting married and moving in together, making every day enjoyable. During my pregnancy, he cared for me, massaging my back when the morning sickness was severe, and going shopping at night if I craved something. He was overjoyed when our daughter was born, and even brought a huge amount of diapers to the hospital in his excitement. He was truly a gentle husband, and I was looking forward to our life as a family of 3. However, the bright future I envisioned quickly collapsed. I fell ill after giving birth, and my hospital stay was unexpectedly extended. It happened just when I got permission to leave the hospital, and was excited to return home with my daughter. Congratulations on your discharge and the birth, Rebecca. We'll be relying on you from now on. Sorry for the sudden news. Surprisingly, Dylan's parents were at our house. I initially thought they had come to celebrate the birth. However, they were not just visiting, but they had moved in and would live with us. Living together? Why all of a sudden? I had never heard such a thing. While they started to play with my daughter, I hurriedly pulled my husband to a corner of the room and questioned him in a low voice. What do you mean by living together? It's troubling to decide this without discussing it. Sarah was just born. While the relationship with my in-laws was generally okay, we hadn't really spoken since the wedding. With the onset of parenting just beginning, I couldn't afford to be considerate of my in-laws. Yet, Dylan pleaded with me. I'm sorry for the suddenness, but I haven't been able to do much for my parents, and they're financially struggling. It could reduce our burden of childcare since mom and dad can also help, right? It's not all bad. It turned out that his father had gambled away his retirement funds, and his mother, having been a homemaker, was out of money and struggling. Dylan had moved out for high school and hadn't visited them much. And now, as an adult, he wanted to help his struggling parents. Taking advantage of my extended hospital stay, he had forced the move. And they had already sold their house. While I wasn't happy with the unilateral decision to live together, his points made some sense. Since it was our first time parenting, the support would be welcome. After all, it was my kind husband's request. I nodded in agreement, and Dylan joyously thanked me repeatedly. Since they were my husband's kind parents, I was sure we would get along soon. They would be a strong support. Despite feeling some discomfort with my husband, I focused only on the benefits of living with my in-laws. Surely, they would be helpful with housework and childcare, among many other things. However, thinking that was a big mistake. Dylan, are you doing the housework? Leave that to your wife. You don't need to do it. Now that we live together, laundry is the wife's job. So you don't have to worry about it. By the way, Rebecca, could you buy this for me next time? I want to try out this new nail polish. At first, my in-laws were humble, but gradually they became arrogant after moving in. When my husband tried to do the housework, they stopped him, saying it was the wife's job. While they did nothing and lazed around all day. They didn't help with childcare either, treating me like a maid. Mother, didn't you just buy expensive nail polish recently? If you buy them so often, it will impact our living expenses. Are you talking back to me? Just shut up and buy it quickly. It's really unpleasant. You're such an inconsiderate daughter-in-law. My mother-in-law, always wanting new things, pushed the shopping onto me. And my father-in-law frequently begged for pocket money to go gambling. Despite having no money. The two of them didn't work and depended on my husband's income, splurging it away. When I pointed it out, they clearly showed their displeasure. Dylan also grew tired of his spendthrift parents. And eventually started giving them money as they demanded. Influenced by his parents' attitude, my once kind husband had changed. Rebecca, this place is a mess. The laundry isn't even folded. What have you been doing all day? At least do the cleaning properly. I don't want to come home to such a dirty house. He complained haughtily, and his late returns from overtime work and drinking parties increased. Now, he hardly did any housework or childcare. When was the last time he even held our daughter? The kind husband I knew was nowhere to be found. The only time I could carve out was spent on crafts I had done since before. As I struggled with solo parenting, housework, and caring for my in-laws. Chronically sleep-deprived and desperately managing day after day. My thoughts felt foggy every day, unable to think clearly. I focused solely on getting through each day without harboring any resentment. Then one day, after finally putting my daughter to sleep and returning to the living room, I heard the sound of a message notification. Looking at the table, I noticed Dylan's smartphone was lit up. It seemed he had left it on and gone to take a bath. Though I had no intention of looking, the ringtone sounded again, and I curiously took a peek. Only to be shocked by what I saw. Thanks for today too, Dylan. I wish you could get divorced soon so we could be together every day. Shall we go on a trip next time? The messages were from a woman. It was clear from her urging for a divorce that their relationship was not innocent. Could it be an affair? I thought about checking more messages, but then I heard him coming out of the bath. However, I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep without checking. I decided to wait until he was sound asleep. Once I confirmed he was asleep, I tried to sneak a look at his smartphone, but it was locked. He usually used fingerprint recognition to unlock it. Using his finger, I tried the fingerprint recognition, and it unlocked successfully. Careful not to wake him, I immediately opened the messaging app. I hoped it was all a misunderstanding. However, my hopes were dashed as I only found flirty messages between them. Can't wait to divorce Rebecca and be with you. I want to be with you forever. It's hard to meet without the company finding out about us. Just a few of the incriminating messages made me feel sick. It appeared Dylan was having an affair with his mistress, who was called Alyssa, within the company. Looking back to the beginning of history, they had started their exchange shortly after my in-laws moved into our house. The most recent dates suggested they had stayed at a hotel on days. Dylan had claimed to be working late. The thought of my husband cheating was unbelievable. And my hands trembled as I gripped his phone. I had never imagined that he was enjoying his time with a woman. From his company while dumping all the housework, childcare, and care of his parents on me. The shock of betrayal blurred my vision. Yet, as I scrolled back through the messages, my eyes caught another message from his mistress. By the way, aren't you getting a transfer abroad soon? I'd love to go too. Maybe I should just go. A transfer abroad? Dylan? I had heard nothing about that. From their conversations, it seemed his transfer abroad was true, which will be due soon. Despite having a newborn daughter, he hadn't shared with me any information about the in-laws' move or the transfer abroad. We were supposed to be a family. The fact that I had to learn about the transfer from his mistress's messages made my blood boil. Then, the word divorce appeared frequently in the messages. Dylan's repeated statements about wanting to divorce me quickly cooled my feelings toward him. Unforgivable. If he was so eager to divorce, I would grant his wish. Learning his true feelings, I began to consider divorce myself. The thought of no longer having to endure the selfishness of Dylan and my in-laws was refreshing. A traitor who did neither housework nor cared for our daughter was unnecessary to me. My feelings for Dylan were completely gone, and I went to the law office to get divorce papers. A month later, Rebecca and Mom and Dad, I have something important to talk about. Dylan, who had returned from an outing on a weekend, called me and his parents into the living room with a serious expression. "Come in." When he said that, a woman entered the living room. "Hello, I'm Alyssa. I'm in a relationship with Dylan." The woman was the mistress Dylan had been communicating with. As she surveyed the gathered faces, she smiled. I was stunned that he would bring his mistress to our home. I couldn't understand why he would bring her home. Was he out of his mind? Even as my in-laws stood aghast, Dylan put his arm around his mistress's shoulder. "I've got a transfer abroad lined up. I'm planning to go there with Alyssa. I intend to divorce Rebecca." "Well, I don't need Sarah, so Rebecca can take her." Although I was not surprised by the transfer or the divorce since I already knew about them, his last dismissive comment about our daughter widened my eyes. It was unthinkable for a father to make such a declaration so boldly. That was beyond the lowest. I glared fiercely at him. "You seriously mean Sarah is not needed?" "I'm serious. I'm planning to marry Alyssa, so I don't need Sarah. Plus, while I'm abroad, you should take care of Mom and Dad. Even though we're divorcing, they're still your family, so it's only natural for you to look after them." The appalling comments about our lovely child boiled my blood, and the additional demand to take care of his parents made me dizzy. Even in divorce, I couldn't bear the thought of caring for his leeching parents. I'm not Dylan's maid. I couldn't imagine how he could think of such things. But I wasn't the only one upset by this talk. Wait a minute, a transfer abroad? Divorce? I haven't heard anything about that. What about our life? Shut up, that's why I'm leaving it to Rebecca until the divorce. Can't you start taking care of yourselves for once? What an awful thing to say. Are you planning to abandon us after marrying that woman? You're a disgrace to parents. As my husband grimaced impatiently, my mother-in-law raised her voice, and my father-in-law glared at him. They had relied on their son, but having him not around was unexpected. Realizing there was no future staying with a nearly divorced daughter-in-law, they seemed to grasp the situation. They were trying somehow to follow him. However, I was appalled by my in-laws who didn't scold him for his affair, and only thought about themselves. It's no surprise, given how they had exploited me. Stop fighting, please. We haven't finished our discussion. As my husband and his parents started arguing, I stepped between them to stop the fight for the moment. When their voices quieted, I faced my husband. "We were talking about divorce, right? Fine, let's divorce." Agreeing to the divorce, Dylan and Alyssa clasped hands joyfully. "We can now get married," they exclaimed. Whether he felt pity for me for accepting the divorce so smoothly, or he just got carried away, Dylan, holding her hand while smugly smiling, said to me, You'll also take care of my parents, so in return, I'll give this house to you, Rebecca. I'll even split the assets because I feel sorry for you. Be grateful." I frowned at his haughty attitude. He probably thought he was being merciful. However, my decision was already made. I agreed to the divorce. However, I refuse both your proposals. What? How are you going to live without the house or the assets? Are you stupid, Rebecca? Are you dumb? Dylan is being kind to you. It's a pity that you've been living with such a person. I'm really glad you chose me. They laughed derisively. Giving me this house? Who's the real fool here? It's about time I set the record straight. It seems you've forgotten, but this house was inherited from my grandfather. The deed is still in my name, so you have no authority to decide what to do with this house. There was a momentary pause in my husband's movements, perhaps having completely forgotten that the house was in my name. I inherited it before we got married. Before we moved in, Dylan himself had said, "Since it's your inherited house, let's take good care of it." It seems he had forgotten that too. Moreover, if I divided the property with you, Dylan, I would be at a loss. So I have no intention of doing so. You at a loss? Even though you earn less than me? He looked down on me as if I were saying something absurd. This man, despite living with me, knew nothing about me. It was astonishing how little he understood about how his spouse earned her income. I've been running an online shop selling handmade accessories with a friend since I retired after getting pregnant. The shop is doing well now, and I'm actually earning quite a bit more than before. In fact, I had been selling handicrafts online with a friend since my pregnancy. I had always been into crafts as a hobby and thought I was quite skilled. Amidst this, a crafting friend suggested we start an online shop while I had time on my hands. Before retiring, I worked in marketing. So I contributed ideas and sold the items as unique, one-of-a-kind products. We accepted custom orders and focused on creating pieces that satisfied our customers. The sales were modest at first, but gradually they improved and became quite substantial. My earnings had long surpassed my husband's income. He was shocked to learn just how much I was making. When asked why I hadn't told him, I simply responded that he had never asked. It was his fault for not taking the time to connect with me as a couple. Lately, I've been paying most of the living expenses. Your parents have been spending your money like water, Dylan. How could we possibly live on your earnings alone? Have you checked your account? Do you realize how much our savings have decreased since we got married? Dylan's face went pale, and he broke out in a cold sweat. He had been so preoccupied with his mistress that he hadn't noticed our dwindling savings. Originally, we lived on his income. However, since his parents moved in, their gambling and shopping had increased our expenses. So I had to use my earnings. Dividing assets under these circumstances would be a loss for me. So, no need for property division, right? Surely, Dylan, you're not expecting to rely on my money after initiating the divorce? When I spoke firmly, he was slightly flustered but nodded vigorously, seemingly trying to stay cool in front of his mistress. Okay, no need for property division. The moment I got his agreement, I took out the already completed divorce papers from the cabinet and placed them in front of him. Then, sign this now. Divorce papers? Why? Dylan was surprised not only that there were divorce papers, but also that they were already filled out. I handed him a pen without allowing him to question further. Good thing I had them handy. It's great that the divorce will be finalized before you go on your overseas assignment. This way, your parents and I will have absolutely nothing to do with each other. As soon as I hinted that I had no intention of taking care of his parents, Dylan and his parents were visibly shaken. It's only natural. Once he signed the divorce papers, I would become a stranger to them. Now that he knew the house was in my name, they would also lose their place to live. Before his parents could make a scene, I urged him to sign, and he finally did. After carefully taking it, I smiled brightly at my in-laws and Dylan, who stood frozen and stiff. Well, since this is now my house, I'd like those who are unrelated to please leave. If you don't leave quickly, I'll inform your company about the affair. Just as I told them that, fearing the news reaching his company, Dylan hurriedly took his parents and his mistress and left the house. Only my precious daughter remained at home. Finally, the house became quiet, and I took a deep breath of relief. 6 months had passed since the divorce was finalized when I received a call from Dylan, who sounded extremely exhausted. It seems he was facing a difficult situation at work. Afterward, my in-laws moved into a cramped, run-down apartment, and Dylan started living at his mistress's place. Perhaps Dylan felt relieved to be away from the troublesome in-laws, and ready for a fresh start with his mistress. However, fearing being abandoned by Dylan as he moved abroad, my in-laws called his company multiple times until the upper management agreed to cancel his overseas transfer. During those calls, they explained in detail about the divorce and his affair, saying he divorced his wife and got together with his mistress. And if he goes abroad with his mistress, we will run out of money and won't be able to live. Because of this, rumors of the affair spread throughout his company, and he was seen as a troublemaker, which led to the cancellation of his overseas transfer. Furthermore, intimate exchanges through company email about dining and hotel arrangements with his mistress were uncovered during an internal investigation. Dylan ended up not just losing his overseas transfer, but being demoted to a remote location. His company was abuzz with the affair story, and he found it difficult to work as he was looked at unfavorably. I want to quit my job. Rebecca, can't you support me? I realize now that I need you. On the phone, my exhausted ex-husband pleaded with me. It was surprising to hear such words from a man who initiated a divorce and moved in with his mistress. Even if Dylan felt he needed me, I did not need him. I refuse. Instead, you'll be paying me child support. Keep that in mind. As soon as I firmly brought up child support, perhaps missing his daughter, I could hear Dylan crying over the phone. I want to see Sarah. I want to spend time with my lovely Sarah. His late regrets repulsed me. To think he could utter such things after all he had said about not needing her. It was you who said you didn't need your daughter, right? Don't forget the words you said to your precious daughter. If you miss her, make sure you pay child support. If he truly cared for his daughter, he should start by fulfilling his responsibilities. Dylan nodded through his tears and agreed to pay the child support. Due to the affair rumors spreading in her company, the mistress was bullied by senior colleagues and eventually resigned due to stress. It's unfortunate she fell ill, but had she not engaged in the affair, she wouldn't have faced such a future. She was being punished for her lack of self-discipline. As his mistress and Dylan's relationship deteriorated, they eventually broke up. Dylan moved out of her house and temporarily lived with his parents in their shabby apartment. But fearing being abandoned again if Dylan was demoted, his parents took his money and disappeared. Dylan contacted me to ask if I knew where they had gone, but of course, I had no idea. From his urgency, it seemed they had taken a significant amount of money. Eventually, Dylan planned to report to the police, saying bitterly, I won't forgive anyone who takes the money I earned. If his parents were found, a nasty family dispute seemed inevitable. Meanwhile, I continued to work and manage a successful online shop with a friend while raising my daughter. Life remained busy, but without the burden of caring for my Dylan and his parents. I felt much freer and more comfortable. My daughter was growing well each day, and she was incredibly adorable. For her sake and mine, I'm focusing on moving forward and doing my best. It was during the memorial service. When I checked the pet camera installed at home, an unbelievable scene jumped into my sight. Hey, is this okay? Catherine's going to cry, isn't she? It's fine. It's boring with her anyway. Why are Robert and my sister together? And this is the two of them naked on the sofa. I squint spontaneously. I never imagined that I would see my husband and my own sister's affair. On the day of my grandfather's memorial service, the two of them, completely unaware of the camera, continued their conversation. Not just about Catherine, but it's uncomfortable like being a son-in-law. I mean, I can't be free. I know, right? My parents are so meticulous. They get along well with the virtuous Catherine. But we need to handle the inheritance issue well too. Yeah, I should have married you, Emily. Even in bed, you are amazing. Really? My sister, not all bad, planted a kiss on Robert's cheek. Robert let out a sloppy sound and wrapped his arm around my sister's shoulder. I nearly dropped the tablet, but I held back. Among the merry chatter of my relatives, I was the only one witnessing such a thing, my mind calm, past the point of anger. I turned up the volume on the tablet all at once. At the same time, my sister's sensual voice echoes. Immediately after, the relatives all turned towards me. Currently, I live alone with my husband, Robert. Robert is a company employee and I'm a homemaker, leading a very ordinary life. As for children, because Robert is busy with work, we've settled on not having them for now. I was well aware that Robert's work was busy, and I agreed, because I understood that it was an important time to see whether he could get promoted. Instead, we brought a Pomeranian named Max from my parents' house. I lived at home until I got married, so Max was very attached to me. Since Robert also agreed, it became a life for two of us and a dog. With Max around, it was cheerful, and I felt calm. Also, I became friendly with my in-laws, who live nearby because of the dog. At my in-laws' house, there was a Maltese named Bella, who was very friendly. She quickly got used to me and Max, and this led me having a lot of conversations with my in-laws. Since then, we have been aligning our working times and going to the dog park together. However, a month ago, Max passed away due to illness. After Max, who had been my emotional support, crossed the Rainbow Bridge, I was truly depressed. I was a housewife, but I could hardly do anything around the house. Robert, on the other hand, didn't say anything, nor did he provide any emotional support. However, my in-laws were worried about me. They invited me to walk Bella or to their house. Through the kindness of my in-laws and the marvelousness of Bella, I was able to gradually recover. But I still couldn't put away Max's toy or the pet camera. If I put them away, it felt like Max would really be gone. Looking at the stuffed animal with Max's bite mark, I let out a sigh. Ah, Max, I want to see you again. The incident occurred on a bright, sunny day. While I was vacuuming, the doorbell rang. I thought it might be a courier and looked at the monitor. The person there was... No way, sis? Hey, Catherine, you're there, right? Open up. She has the kind of face that anybody can tell she's beautiful at first glance. And she was wearing a dress that did not skimp on showing off her skin. It was unmistakably my sister. My sister and I don't look or act alike, and we don't have anything in common. Moreover, she has a bad habit. She isn't satisfied until she takes what belongs to others, and that includes my boyfriend. She took my boyfriend multiple times, and each time I confronted her about it. However, she always responded nonchalantly. Isn't it the fault of the person who inclines? I thought I could finally relax when she got married and moved far away, but when I reluctantly opened the door, my sister greeted me with a grin. Her bright rose-colored lipstick suited her well, which just made me more angry. I came back home, so I wanted to drop by. You came back? Did you get divorced? Not quite. We are just having a little fight. Now, let me come in. As she said this, she took off her high heels and brazenly stepped into my house. She has always hated animals and never visited my house. But she must have heard about Max's death from our parents. She didn't seem to notice my bitter expression and looked around the room with delight. Nice room. Robert's parents live nearby too, right? Yes, our house is about halfway between our parents' house and Robert's parents' house. Huh. It's pretty cocky to build a house near your husband's parents' home. While uttering words that felt like little pricks, she gazed at our wedding picture displayed on the shelf. Unexpectedly, my sister traced her finger over Robert's face in the photograph. Seeing this, I felt a chill run down my spine. She wouldn't possibly try to take my husband, would she? I quickly tried to come to my senses even I thought so. My sister tended to like muscular men. Robert was quite slim, so he probably wouldn't be her type. Even I knew this, seeing my sister's back made me uneasy. A few days after my sister's arrival, we had a memorial service for my grandfather. Amazingly, my in-laws said they would help. It's not that special thing around the rural area, but it was a great relief. I'm sorry for that trouble, Father, and thank you. I had connections with business with your grandfather, Catherine, and I was planning to attend anyway, so I thought it would be better if I could help. I really appreciate it. I wish my sister could learn from you. Indeed. Believe it or not, my sister said I don't have time to spend on that deceased, and reportedly went off somewhere. I thought my sister was behaving strangely, but it might be better than her disrupting the ceremony. When I was preparing food after the memorial service, I was called by my cousin's children. Apparently, they wanted to see Max. Their innocent words slightly hurt my heart, but I couldn't blame the children. Max has gone to heaven, but I have photos and videos. Would you like to see them? I handed them the tablet I had brought with me and explained how to use it simply. This tablet had many videos of Max from the pet camera and the ones I took myself. The children immediately quieted down and were all glued to the tablet screen. I understand that there are pros and cons to letting children use the internet, but I thought that if it could keep them quiet, I would leave the babysitting to the tablet for now. I went to the kitchen to help my mother. Just as I was about to bring the alcohol, my eyes landed on the gas stove. It seemed like someone had left water boiling in the kettle and had walked away leaving the fire on. In my haste to turn it off, I accidentally scorched the sleeve of my morning dress. Oh no, the fire! Fire! Thinking that my startled mother had heard me, the next moment water was suddenly thrown. As I stood there, wide-eyed, my worried mother approached. "I'm sorry. I had fire and panicked. Oh, you're all wet. What should we do?" "It's okay, Mom. I will have Robert bring something from home." "But—" "It's fine. I'll call him now." Although Robert was scheduled to attend the memorial service, he had to take a nap first because his urgent work went until midnight. I thought he would be awake by this time, so I called him, but he didn't answer. But our home is only 20 minutes away by car, and it's too far to walk. I was thinking of doing something as it is, but then I remembered about the pet camera. The camera is in the living room, so if Robert is awake, I would be able to see him. If he is not there yet, I will have to call him until he wakes up. I asked the children to return the tablet and open the app. When I opened it, I could see someone on the living room sofa. I was about to call Robert, thinking he was awake, when another person appeared in the camera. Is this my sister? When I zoomed in on the camera, it was definitely my sister. I connected my earphones to the tablet and listened to sound. "Hey, is this okay? Isn't Catherine going to cry?" "It's fine. It's boring being with her." "Why are Robert and my sister together?" I was completely frozen by the shocking scene on the pet camera. Robert was topless, and for some reason. My sister, Emily, was wearing a lab coat like a female doctor. They were sitting on the sofa with a distance like that of lovers. I never thought I would witness the affair of my husband and my real sister. On the day of my grandfather's memorial service, the two of them, completely unaware of the camera, continued their conversation. Not just about Catherine, but it feels uncomfortable like I'm adopted into the family. I feel like I can't be free. I get it. Our parents are so detailed. They get along with Catherine, who only has her sincerity. Well, but there is also the inheritance issue, so we have to handle it well. True. I should have married you. The bed with you is also amazing. Oh? My sister, not completely displeased, kissed Robert on the cheek. Robert let out a sloppy voice and wrapped his arm around my sister. I nearly dropped the tablet I was holding, but somehow managed to hold on. I can't believe it. I will never forgive them. Robert, you are a bad boy. Huh? They started flirting so blatantly that I couldn't help but yell at them. Just when I thought I was going to break into the house, even if I had to walk there, a loud noise came from behind. I took off my earphones and turned around in a panic. I found my mother-in-law standing there with a pale face. Could she have seen it? This is... That's my son, and that's Emily, right? Well, I don't intend it to hide it, but I don't want to upset my mother-in-law. As I tried to approach my mother-in-law, my earphone fell out. Such a naughty boy! I'll have to check up here. The screen clearly showed my sister, who is about to put her hand on Robert's pants. Although I was thinking, why now of all times? I tried to stop the video quickly, but it was my mother-in-law who stopped me. Not understanding the meaning of her action, I looked at my mother-in-law, who was shaking her head with a blue face. We shouldn't stop it. This can serve as evidence, so let's keep recording the whole thing. My mother-in-law's action from that point were swift. She immediately called for my father-in-law and my parents to see the video, and instructed my cousin to take the children to another room. As everyone gathered to watch the video, awful words began to fly out one after another. Our family is nothing but country bumpkins. I'm only interested in the money we've managed to save up. Marriage is so boring, and so on, all of which made us want to cover our ears. After a while, my father-in-law stood up with a red face. Let's go home. I'll drive the car. Everyone nodded and agreed, and we headed for our house. Of course, the camera was kept recording. When we arrived home, the lights in the living room were on. As we approached the front door, we could hear a voice loudly hinting that they were in the midst of something. Catherine, you stay in the back. The key was taken by my father-in-law, and I followed his instruction to go to the back. My mother-in-law rubbed my shoulder to make me feel better, and I felt slightly better. When we entered the room, Emily was on top of Robert on the sofa. Robert, what are you doing? Huh? Dad? My sister instantly realized the situation and tried to run away with her clothes, but was caught by my father. After attempting to escape for a while, she was silenced by my mother's slap. My mother looked at my sister with fiery eyes, making my chest tighten. Afterwards, my sister and Robert were made to sit formally in the living room and explain the entire situation. My sister was initially attracted to Robert's income. She had never been with his type before, but she was tired of her marriage and approached him for a taste of something different. As for Robert, he had always had a liking for older women and cosplay, and that didn't change after our marriage. Apparently, he quickly accepted my sister's seduction because of his interest. Their ridiculous reasons left us all completely drained. I can't believe it. You still haven't gotten over your habit of laying hands on what isn't yours. It's the person who fell for it that's at fault. Enough. You are also responsible for seducing him. Grow up already. Yeah, Catherine. You'll forgive me, right? Hell no, you pervert. As I scolded them, the two of them shrunk even more. A few months after the ridiculous incident, I started attending a school to become a certified groomer. It's hard with so much to learn, but it's fun to be involved with something I love. There are people at the school who also have experienced divorce, and we quickly became good friends. Afterwards, I demanded compensation from Robert and my sister and divorced him. Naturally, I have cut off all ties with the two of them. As for Robert, he lost his job because he was hired through my father-in-law's connections. Given the circumstances, he was severely criticized within the company. At first, he seems to be living with my sister, but their relationship quickly deteriorated and they separated. As for my sister, she's been hopping from job to job in the entertainment business. Despite being in customer service, her self-centered personality persists and she seems unable to hold a job for long. And my in-laws. Catherine, long time no see. We've finished moving, so feel free to visit if you'd like. Yes, I'd love to come by. I want to see Bella too. Of course, Bella has been quite popular recently. My in-laws sold their house and started a new life elsewhere. It seems to be a new apartment with a dog park nearby. With this change, my mother-in-law started an SNS account to post Bella's daily life, which has become very popular. Apparently, Bella has become something like a star. I ended the call saying my next class was about to start, and stroked the head on my dear Max set as my phone's wallpaper. It was too tough to look back at his photos, but thanks to the pet camera and Max, I found out about Robert's affair. I think Max must have cut off the bad relationship for me. Max, I will do my best. With that, I took a new step forward, promising my most beloved family member. It came to light after our marriage that my in-laws were $100,000 in debt. For some reason, it became my responsibility to repay their debt. I tried to endure it for the sake of my family, but then I found out I can't forgive them. They were just having fun behind my back, planning to use me to repay their debts. From that moment on, I put a plan into action to revenge my husband and my in-laws, who would be rejoicing that the debt is fully repaid 5 years later into hell. My name is Mary. I lost my mother at an early age and lived with my father, but he passed away a few years ago. The one who cheered me up when I was down after becoming alone was my old friend. It was through this friend that I met my husband, David. I met David at a bar where I went out for drinks with my old friend after a long time, and we ended up drinking together. He had just been dumped by his girlfriend at the time and was complaining about it over drinks. "Oh, I'm lonely. Is this really how my life should be?" The one who heard that and proposed enthusiastically was my friend. "Mary is single right now, isn't she? Why don't you guys date?" My friend, who was being playful, made David and I exchange contact information and even set up the next date. It felt somewhat forced, but she seemed to know that David was actually my type, as expected of a friend who has known me for so long. I was a little excited about the date with David that she had set up. In conclusion, I had a great time with him. It didn't feel like our first date at all. After that, we went on dates almost every week. When I first met you, David, it was right after you broke up with your ex. Why did you break up with her? Well, it's an old story. Now I have you, Mary. David is kind and fun to talk to. I wondered why his ex dumped him, but at that time I didn't think too much about it. About 6 months into our relationship, David proposed to me. There's no reason for me to refuse. I happily chose to become his wife. While I was being nervous, I went to his parents' house to greet them, and my in-laws welcomed me. Mary, you work at a major company, don't you? That's amazing. Ah, yes. Are you planning to continue working after you get married? Yes, that's the plan. If both of you work, you'll have more financial flexibility, and I think that's good. My mother-in-law, a full-time homemaker, surprisingly supported my career. I was relieved, as I thought I would be told to quit my job and take care of the house. David also agreed to continue working after we got married. Thus, without any particular trouble with my in-laws, our married life began. We purchased a house under my name, and just when we were about to start our new life, David came to me with a serious look and said he has something to talk about. Actually, my parents are in debt. What? I had never heard such a story before. Debt? How much? At first it wasn't much, but as it got delayed, the debt grew bigger and bigger. I asked while facing myself. Just tell me, how much is the debt? About $100,000. That that much? Even if they wanted to repay it, my parents live on their pensions, right? They can't repay it as much as they like, and the debt is just growing. I see. Mary, you mentioned before we got married that there's some inheritance from your father, right? To be frank, how much is it? The conversation was taking a bad turn. Could it be? Unfortunately, my suspicion was correct. David asked if it was possible to repay his parents' debt with the inheritance I received from my father. Why do I have to? We even have a mortgage on our house. Even if we keep repaying little by little, we'll never see the end. What about your savings, David? Oh, I don't have any savings. But before we got married, you said you had savings when I told you that I have some savings, right? That was... I was just trying to match with what you were saying then, Mary. The truth is I have zero savings. That's why only you can pay it off. David stubbornly pleaded me. Although it's quite unreasonable, we indeed can't ignore the debt. The problem was that I didn't have $100,000 in savings. My savings are only the $70,000 I received as an inheritance. What will we do about the rest? We have quite a bit of leeway with both of us working, right? And Mary, you often work overtime, so I want you to use that overtime pay to the debt. In other words, he wants to put all the money I received from my father and the money I earned through hard work towards repaying the debt. Looking at him, it seems there's no other way except for me to help. Fortunately, the total amount from the inheritance and my salary is not an unpayable amount. I reluctantly agreed to his request. Later, my in-laws rushed to our house. Mary, you're going to help repay the debt? Thank you so much. My mother-in-law was overjoyed and crying. David responded proudly. Mom, you should be grateful to me too. If I hadn't married Mary, things wouldn't have gone so smoothly like this. Yes, indeed. I thought you were a good wife from the first time I met you. David's judgment was correct. My father-in-law was also overjoyed, hugging David. Well done, David. Now we can walk around without trembling at the thought of debt collectors. We can finally eat out. Shall we celebrate with steak? Agreed. Looking at my cheerful husband and in-laws, I was dumbfounded. Eating out for steak while having debts, and they're not even the one repaying the debts. David, noticing my dumbfounded expression, finally cautioned them. Hey, calm down, Mom and Dad. It's because you two spend money without thinking, but the debt keeps increasing, right? Despite being big spenders, you can't even calculate. When David said that mockingly, my mother-in-law huffed and argued back. Oh, you're the same, aren't you, David?
Huh? Why me?
You've always been showy, David. Whenever you had a girl you liked, you'd go into debt just to take her on dates or buy her presents. It's no wonder you got dumped when they found out you had no money.
What the hell? I learned from my past mistakes and married Mary without spending a dime. Smart move, right?
Well, I'll admit, that did help.
Now it makes sense.
The reason why David was quiet about why his ex-girlfriend dumped him was because of that. Listening to David and my in-laws' conversation, it seems like he married me for my money, which makes me sick. Even about the debt repayment, it's like they're blatantly saying, David, who caught the money tree, is amazing. My mother-in-law continued, David has always been like that. Whenever he's got a girl he likes, he starts spending money left and right. It's pretty obvious. Hearing that, I realized something. Lately, he's been frequently withdrawing money from our joint account. Could it be? Disregarding my suspicions, David, as if he had a brilliant idea, spoke.
Right. Mary, you've been transferring money to my family every month, right? But since everyone in my family is bad at managing money, can you repay the debt directly from now on?
What? As I was baffled by his absurd proposal, my in-laws celebrated cheerfully. That's a good idea. Here you go, Mary. This is the account number for the transfer. My mother-in-law handed me the account number for the transfer while I was still being speechless. So how much can you repay each month, and how many years will it take to repay it all? As I responded to my mother-in-law, who was asking as if it was none of her business, I felt a bit irritated. Firstly, I'll put the $70,000 from the inheritance towards the debt repayment, so the remaining amount is $30,000, right? If it's $30,000, I think I can transfer about $8,000 to $9,000 per month and repay it in 5 years. 5 years, huh? I guess it can't be helped if it takes that long. And that's how I started gradually repaying my in-laws' debt. First, I'll repay the debt with the $70,000 from the inheritance as immediate payment. This should ease the debt collectors from coming back for a while. But that's when I found out. My husband was having an affair behind my back. No wonder he was spending a lot and it was getting out of hand. I won't stand for him having fun by himself. If he's doing that, then I'll take countermeasures as well. In 5 years, I hope that you'll be panicking for what's going to happen. For the next 5 years until the debt was fully paid, I decided to handle all communications with the debt collectors, letting my husband and in-laws live as they always had. This was all for the sake of my plan that I was carrying out behind their backs. I can't wait to see their surprised faces 5 years from now. And then, one day, 5 years later, David was looking at the bank book.
As expected of you, Mary, you've been making the payments on the dot every month, and the remaining $30,000 is all paid off.
Yes, so it seems.
Well, I'm really grateful to you. Anyway, I actually have something important to tell you.
Something important?
I want us to break up.
David said that with a serious face.
You know the saying, when the money runs out, the relationship ends? Actually, there's a girl I want to be with. Once you and I break up, she's going to move in here. So, I want you to go to my parents' house.
What's that supposed to mean? I immediately lashed back at him. Wait a minute, why do I have to go to your parents' house?
She hates complicated things like dealing with in-laws. My dad and mom are as careless with money as ever, so it would be easier for you to manage them if you lived together, right?
You said you want to break up, right? Even then you expect me to take care of your parents?
That's just absurd, no matter how you look at it.
My parents rely on you completely. Now that it's come to this, you should take care of them till the end. Besides, if they get into debt again, it'll be a hassle for you to pay it back, won't it? My husband, who had left the repayment of the debt to me, and had been enjoying an affair behind my back. But it wasn't just that. Even after the divorce, he'd planned to leave his parents to me, and so that he could live with his lover. That's absolutely unforgivable. I won't let that happen. I'm sick and tired of David's selfishness. Barely controlling my anger, I tried to respond calmly. I fully agree with the divorce. I see. It's good that you're an understanding woman.
But the one who's leaving is you.
Huh? What are you talking about? This is my house.
No, it's not. Have you forgotten that when we bought this place, I paid all the down payment from my savings, and the name on that agreement was mine, right?
Was it really like that?
You said at that time, I don't want the property under my name because I don't want to be forced to repay the mortgage if anything happens. I should have felt that something didn't feel right back then when you said that. If I had noticed your incompetency from the start, I wouldn't have had to go around in such circles.
Well, whatever. You're broke, so I'll give you the house to live in, out of pity.
Broke?
Yeah, right. You've used all your inheritance for paying off the debt, and you've been transferring all of your salary over, so you have zero savings, right?
I do have savings.
Huh? There's no way, right? I just checked your transfer history.
Then you understand. All the money is in a separate account. At these words, David froze for a moment, then screamed out in a panic.
Wait a minute. What do you mean separate account?
He checked the bank book in a rush. Only then did David realize that the account I had been transferring to every month was a different one than the debt repayment account.
Then what about my parents' debt?
Of course, it remains as it is. You were leaving all the dealings with the debt collectors to me, so you didn't notice what I've been doing at all. Upon hearing this, David turned pale.
You've been deceiving me all along?
Deceiving? Aren't you doing the same thing?
What do you mean?
You've been cheating on me behind my back, haven't you? At these words, David flinched.
When did I ever cheat?
You know better, don't you? I noticed 5 years ago, though.
5 years ago?
That day, I felt uneasy about the conversation between you and your mother. You have always been one to spend money when you have a girl you like. I noticed then that you were starting to splurge.
But that's unbelievable.
Thinking that might be the case, I carefully observed you and saw you with women everywhere. When I was convinced you were cheating, I decided to move all the money, which was supposed to be used for debt repayment, into a separate account, to secure my own living expenses after divorcing you, David. After learning the truth, David was left in a daze for a while.
I need to contact my dad right away.
David immediately contacted his parents, and they rushed to our house. Perhaps they already knew what was happening, as they came at me with great fury. "Mary, what do you mean you haven't been repaying the debt?" I responded in a cool tone to my father-in-law, who was shouting with anger. Why should I repay the debt of someone who's going to become a stranger to me? Besides, there's no way I could hand over my salary to a husband who betrayed me, is there?
Stranger? Betrayed? What are you talking about?
My father-in-law had a look on his face as if he couldn't understand what was going on. I didn't miss the flustered look on my mother-in-law's face next to him. You understand what I'm talking about, don't you, mother-in-law?
Eh? What?
There's no point in playing dumb.
It was you, mother-in-law, who told me about the signs that David has a new woman he's in love with. There's no way you wouldn't notice about his affair, right? Th- that's not only money, but your sense of ethics is also careless, isn't it, mother-in-law? How rude! I just want my David to be happy. David's happiness, huh? You are a monster who tramples on my happiness by making me repay for your debt and wishes for your son's happiness. At those words, my mother-in-law fell awkwardly silent. My father-in-law then apologized to me. Mary, I'm truly sorry for what my son has done. Can't you cheer up? The money, you only moved it to a separate account to get back at David, right? After telling me that, my father-in-law scolded David. What on earth are you doing, David? To cheat on such a good wife with another woman? Apologize sincerely and ask Mary for forgiveness. And hurry up and use the money in the account to repay the debt. I sighed to myself. After all, nothing about these people have changed since 5 years ago. Ultimately, all they think about is their debt being repaid. No matter how much you apologize, I have no intention of forgiving you. I have no intention of being a part of your family either. It seems like he wants to divorce quickly and be with his new lover, so why don't you try to mooch everything off her the next time? At those words, David, unable to bear it any longer, shouted, I can't let her do that. Hearing that, I completely lost my temper. So it's okay to let me do it, but not her? Who do you think I am? That's... You always listen to what I say, but she's selfish, and it's a hassle when she throws a fit. I see. I certainly have been too obedient to you. I have my regrets too, so from now on I will do as I please. First, I will claim the damages you done to our married life with your affair, and the $70,000 from my father's inheritance that I used to pay off the debt, I will make sure you return it all. Then David and his parents suddenly started panicking. Wait a minute. You know I don't have any savings, right? There's no way I can afford to pay you for the damages. That's not my problem. Why don't you ask your mistress to help with the payments? But I will also be claiming damages from her too. Even to her? If I do that, she might break up with me. Oh, wow. How shallow could your relationship be with her? You're saying that she's been with someone else's husband without any commitment? Mary, please, reconsider. His father joined him in. Mary, I beg you as well. We won't be able to survive if we have to go back to living with debt. At that, I exaggeratedly shrugged my shoulders. That's right. With just the remaining $30,000 in debt repayment, you two are already at your limit, aren't you? So we don't have to return the $70,000 from the inheritance? Yes, I'll stop claiming from you two. They sighed in relief, and David looked at me. Then withdraw the damages from me too. If you're giving up on the inheritance, give up on the damages you're claiming too. Huh? What are you talking about? I have no intention of giving up on reclaiming my precious father's inheritance. But you said you won't claim the $70,000. Yes, from your parents. Instead, I'll add a reimbursement of $70,000 to the damages I'm claiming from you. No, you're joking, right? You have no heart. I'll say that back right to you. You took my father's inheritance and were having an affair behind my back. No decent person would do such a thing. Mary, I beg you. Shut up. I don't want to see your face ever again. From now on, we will communicate through a lawyer. Goodbye. I yelled at David and stormed out of the house. With that, I headed straight for a law firm and told them everything that had happened. A month later, with the help of my lawyer, I completed the divorce and procedures to claim for damages and was finally able to cut ties with David and his parents. I didn't get all the money, but we reached an agreement that David would pay considerably more than usual. David, who had no savings, was deeply in debt, as was his family. But that seems like an appropriate end for them. Thanks to forcing separate account transfers for these 5 years, I was able to save money at a rather high pace. With the damages fee as well, for now, I can treat myself to delicious meals and do what I love. Once I'm refreshed, I feel like I'll be able to start anew and work hard again. From the supposedly empty house, I heard some voices. I clearly sensed the presence of a human along with a creepy creaking noise from the floor. It seemed like someone was on the second floor. Filled with apprehension that it might be an intruder, I tiptoed up the stairs, trying not to make a noise. Oddly, there were clothes scattered in the hallway as if making a path, leading to the bedroom my husband and I share. Nathan. Eva. At that moment I heard familiar voices coming from inside the room. It was a cheerful, whispering voice, as if sharing a secret. Is this okay? Turning down my mother-in-law's invitation to do this? I'd rather be here with you than entertaining some old lady. Stop it. Enough. Peeking inside the room through the slightly open door, I was at a loss for words, because my husband and my daughter-in-law were lying in bed together, holding each other naked. A sweet atmosphere, like that of lovers, was hovering around. I'm happy to have a daughter-in-law like you. You should pay attention to mother-in-law, too. It's pitiful. She can be treated as a housemaid. After all, she can only do the household chores. The two of them, laughing and insulting me, probably never suspected they were being watched by the person in question. I couldn't hold back the anger welling up from the bottom of my stomach. I will make them regret doing such a filthy act in broad daylight, in the bedroom of a married couple. My name is Angela. I have always worked as a nursing assistant at a hospital. Although it's always hectic, I take pride in my job, and I enjoy interacting with patients. I met my husband when he was admitted to the hospital, and after dating, we got married in our 20s. I had heard that nurses and caregivers often date patients, but I never thought such a thing would happen to me, just like in the comics. It didn't take long before I married my reliable and kind husband. We had a son, and we've lived happily as a family of 3 without any significant troubles. Our son, who excelled academically and was very kind to others, grew up in an unknown manner. I may be doting, but my son is and always has been my pride and joy. Upon graduating from college, he joined a well-known corporation. His performance was excellent, and his work ethic was commended. Smith, I'm proud that you're working hard, but are you taking some time to relax? Don't push yourself too hard when you're not feeling well. Hey, you guys worry too much. I'm fine. Oh, by the way, I have some happy news to share with you both soon. Look forward to it. To me and my husband, who were worried, our son says so with a bright smile. Wondering what the happy news could be, one day our son came home with his girlfriend. This is Ava. We've been dating for a couple of years. I am thinking about marrying her. When our son told us that, we were surprised and overjoyed. Although it was a bit sad to think that our son was finally starting a family, we knew as parents that we couldn't always be by his side. If our son chose her, she must be a good match for him. She was polite and friendly to me and my husband, so we had a good impression of her. And then, half a year later, our son got married. I met my son's wife and relatives for the first time at the wedding. They were all very nice people, and the mother of my son's wife even exchanged contact information with us on our first meeting. She told us to consult her if we ever needed anything and to support each other, and I remembered feeling very reassured. We still keep in touch with the family of my son's wife occasionally and dine at each other's houses. With our son married and us getting along well with our daughter-in-law's parents, our family seemed to be smooth sailing at a glance. But there was something that bothered me. It was the frequent visits from my son's wife. We all agreed not to live together, but for some reason my daughter-in-law showed up at our house. Perhaps because she is a homemaker and has too much free time, or maybe she's just trying to be considerate because we're her in-laws.
Ava, you don't have to worry so much. Even if you don't visit us often, it doesn't change the fact that you're part of our family. When I said this, my daughter-in-law tilted her head. I'm not being considerate. I just want to visit, so it's okay. I returned a stiff smile to my daughter-in-law, who said this with a bright smile. Honestly, our relationship with our daughter-in-law is still new, and sometimes we still see her as a guest. I think it's inevitable to feel tired when a stranger stays for a long time. However, there was another reason why I couldn't easily accept my son's wife. For some reason, she would often find excuses to take my husband out. At first, it was for shopping, then more shopping, and then movies. For me, my days off with my husband were my greatest respite, so having them taken away by my daughter-in-law didn't sit well with me. Sorry, mother-in-law, I'm borrowing your husband, okay? When she left, my daughter-in-law smiled in a way that I didn't like, as if she was triumphant. What was she trying to compete with me for? And my husband, who would listen to what my daughter-in-law said rather than spend time with me, was also to blame. Honey, could you not go out with Ava so much? You two are father-in-law and daughter-in-law, right? Isn't the distance a bit too close? Normally, the relationship between a father-in-law and a daughter-in-law is awkward, but could it really be that they're friendly enough to go out just two of them? Being too friendly and being perceived as weird by others wouldn't be good for them either. When I told my husband this, partially as a warning, he laughed it off lightly. I'm just building a good relationship with my son's wife. Don't worry. I understand that, but isn't it too often? My daughter-in-law comes to our house every 2 or 3 days, and if my husband is off, they go out in the morning, and if he's working, they go out after work. Even I, his wife, don't go out so frantically. Ava is trying to get along with us. It wouldn't be fair if I didn't respond to that, would it? Despite my genuine concern, my husband only gave vague responses, and it was like pushing on a curtain. My husband looks young for his age and has a good physique, so I can't help but worry that maybe my daughter-in-law is looking at him with those eyes. Well, if that's not the case, she'll probably get tired of playing with my husband eventually. I was optimistic about it, but contrary to my expectations, their relationship became even more intimate. When I returned from work, my husband, who was supposed to be off that day, was not at home. I tried calling and texting him, but no matter how much time passed, there was no reply. I didn't know whether he would eat dinner or not, so I just prepared his portion just in case. Several hours later, just when the day was about to end, my husband finally came home. And for some reason, our son's wife was next to him. Where were you? Was Ava with you? I was worried because I couldn't reach you. Oh, we just went on a little trip. With whom? With Ava. We went far away. Surprisingly, my husband and our son's wife had gone on a day trip from morning until late at night. When I heard that they had gone out of the county together, my mind was in a mess. The fact that he had gone on a trip with our son's wife without notifying me in advance, and that he had ignored my messages and enjoyed himself, made me incredibly angry. What are you thinking? You are definitely acting strange. Going on a day trip with your son's wife is extremely inappropriate. Don't get so mad. There's nothing to hide. That's why we came back like this, right? How am I supposed to know that? How can you ignore my messages and still be so nonchalant about it? My previous doubts and anxieties exploded as I couldn't stop shouting at my husband. Now that I think about it, I was also jealous of our son's wife. For the past few years, my husband and I haven't gone out together, nor have I been asked to go far away. Despite this, he casually goes on a day trip with his son's wife, which made me increasingly irritated. Please, don't be so angry, Angela. Nathan was just trying to get along with me. Ava defended my husband with teary eyes. Why am I being made out to be the bad one? Ava, it's late. I'll take you home. No, you stay here. I'll take her home. I forcefully pushed my husband aside and decided to drop her off at her home. I didn't want to leave my husband and her alone anymore. It takes about 30 minutes to drive from our house to my son and his wife's house. I had to spend an awkward time with her until we reached her house, but it couldn't be helped. As we drove through the silent night, Ava suddenly opened her mouth. Angela,
Are you jealous because Nathan and I are close? The anger welled up again at her mocking tone, but if we fought here, I would only be made the villain again. I took a deep breath and tried to answer calmly. If you think that, why do you go out alone with my husband? Well, because Nathan is so cool. I want to be with him more. You don't understand how lonely Smith is. If you have time to hang out with your father-in-law, you should take care of your own husband. I had also received counsel from my son. He told me that he hasn't been going out with his wife lately, and they aren't doing newlywed things either. I couldn't mention that his wife has been frequently meeting my husband. I wanted to avoid a rift in our family because of my son's wife. But Smith is not enough for me. He's too nice and lacks excitement. I get along with Nathan because your husband pays attention to me now. Has she forgotten that she's talking to her mother-in-law right now? Her words were incredibly impertinent and rude. After dropping off my son's wife, I returned home without seeing my son. I didn't know how to face him. And then a big incident happened. One day I was invited to Ava's parents' house. I have a lunch with my son's wife's parents about once a month under the pretext of a dining party. Since exchanging contact information, our closeness has quickly increased, so I happily accepted the invitation. My son and his wife were also expected to join. Of course, I invited my husband as well, but he did not give a favorable response. The party was scheduled for a day off during the day, but he said he had an important work at the company that day. Since he wasn't going out with my son's wife, I felt relieved. After my husband left the house, I checked the lock and also left. It's not too far to Ava's parents' house, and it's easy to get there by one train. But when I arrived at the station, I realized I had forgotten the gift I was supposed to bring to them. There was still plenty of time, so I decided to rush back and get it. When I opened the door and entered the house, I heard voices from the house where there should have been no one. I clearly felt a human presence, and there was a creepy sound as if the floor was creaking. It seemed that someone was on the second floor. Filled with anxiety that there might be an intruder, I slowly and silently climbed up to the second floor. Somehow there were clothes scattered in the hallway, like breadcrumbs, leading to the bedroom I shared with my husband. Nathan. Ava. Then I heard a familiar voice coming from the room. It was a whisper, as if sharing a secret, filled with enjoyment. Is this okay? Rejecting mother-in-law's invitation and doing this? I'd rather be with you, Ava, than keep company with an old woman like that. Oh, stop it. I, who peeked into the room through the slightly open door, was lost for words. My undressed husband and daughter-in-law were lying on the bed, embracing each other. The sweet atmosphere that filled the room was like that of a pair of lovers. I'm happy that a wife like Ava has come to me. We should also pay attention to mother-in-law, right? Poor thing. Just treat her like a housekeeper. She's good for nothing after all. The two of them, laughing while speaking ill of me, probably had no idea they were being watched. I couldn't contain the anger that welled up from the bottom of my heart. I would make them regret doing such filthy things in the couple's bedroom in broad daylight. Before entering the room, I made a call to my daughter-in-law's mother's smartphone. Once the call connected, I switched it to video call, and with determination, I barged into the bedroom. You two, you're doing something incredible, aren't you? My husband and daughter-in-law, still embracing each other, looked at me with wide eyes in surprise. Without caring, I made sure to broadcast what was happening to Ava's parents, who were probably preparing for a dinner party. The reason you two get along so strangely well is because of this relationship, isn't it? Of course, you couldn't tell the truth. Everyone, what should we do about these two? Upon realizing that they were being filmed, my daughter-in-law suddenly let out a shriek. Stop filming, pervert! Oh, are you introducing yourself? You're the one who's dirty and a pervert for doing this with your mother-in-law's husband. Being retorted at, my daughter-in-law made a face as if she had bitten on a sour bug and ran towards the clothes I had gathered. She was planning to snatch the clothes and run away. But I, while still showing the two of them to Ava's parents, threw the clothes out of the bedroom window. The wind was strong today, and the clothes flew far away, but I didn't care. From the other side of the phone, I could hear angry voices exclaiming, What are you doing? And
Ava, what is the meaning of this? The parents of my son's wife. And then, Ava, Dad, what are you doing? My son, who had already arrived, had also seen their disgrace. In a cold voice, my son murmured to his dumbfounded father and wife, I'm coming over now. Stay there. If you run away, I'm not going to forgive you. His voice was filled with anger and harshness that I couldn't imagine coming from him normally. My husband and daughter-in-law seemed too drained even to run away, and they hung their heads, still naked. Soon after, my son and the parents of my daughter-in-law arrived at our house. As I guided them to the bedroom, my husband and daughter-in-law were still sitting dumbfounded. When did the two of you start this relationship? Have you been deceiving me and our parents all along? When my son asked them accusingly, my husband and daughter-in-law began to talk almost simultaneously. They started this relationship not long after my son got married. My husband seemed to enjoy being liked by his young and cute daughter-in-law more than his aging wife, and he apparently got carried away. My daughter-in-law said that she was attracted to my experienced and dependable husband more than my kind but somehow unsatisfying son. However, we could not understand their reasoning at all. They made us feel sick to think that they had given in to their desires and started a relationship, despite the fact that there was a 30-year age gap and that the other party was a married relative. After discussing it, my son, I, and the parents of my daughter-in-law came to a conclusion. I'm going to divorce Ava, and I'm going to cut ties with you, Dad. I'm also going to leave you. My son and I decided to divorce our respective spouses and also to claim compensation for the affair. The parents of my daughter-in-law said that they would let their daughter take responsibility for her actions, and they agreed to the divorce and compensation claims. It was probably an incident too enormous to cover up. Even I feel pathetic and embarrassed by what my husband has done. However, the moment they heard the words divorce and claim for damages, my husband and my son's wife, who had been all lovey-dovey until then, began to act in a way that was unimaginable. Surprisingly, they began to blame each other. It's Ava's fault. She seduced me, and that's why this happened. No, it's Nathan's fault. He thought he could get away with it because I am his son's wife. Surprisingly, the reason they ended up having an affair was due to both of them. It was an ugly dispute, unimaginable from the sweet words they had been whispering to each other until a while ago. Apparently, they thought if they could clarify who was at fault, they could reduce or cancel the claim for damages. Unfortunately, neither I nor my son would be fooled by such a farce. Especially my son, who was furious at being betrayed by his own father and wife. There's no way one of you is to blame. If you thought having an affair was wrong, you should have stopped it by your own will, right? Blaming someone else and overlooking your own lack of discipline. It's disgraceful. My son calmly criticized the two. Both my husband and my eldest son's wife just hung their heads, unable to say anything. Afterward, my son and I both filed for divorce and claimed damages from our respective partners. Fortunately, my son's ex-mother-in-law had recorded that video call, which became a strong piece of evidence. My husband wanted to reconcile, but I had no intention of doing so. Now you're asking for reconciliation after saying all those nasty things about me so happily? You just don't want to pay the compensation. That was just a slip of the tongue. I truly love only you. A truly sincere person wouldn't cheat in the first place. I'm disappointed with you, and it's a joke to think of spending my old age with someone like you. After firmly rejecting him, my husband gradually gave up. It seems that my son is also being persistently asked by his wife to reconcile, but he has no intention of forgiving her. When normally gentle people get angry, no amount of apology will earn their forgiveness. Perhaps my son's wife learned this the hard way. Although we apologized sincerely to the parents of my son's wife, they comforted us, saying it wasn't our responsibility, but that of the parties involved. Regardless of my husband and my son's wife, I think I was lucky to meet such good people. After divorcing my husband, I moved out of the house and started living in an apartment. I thought I would feel lonely after parting with my husband, whom I had been with for many years, but I actually felt relieved. My son seemed the same. His face lit up after he parted ways with his wife,
After I divorced my ex-husband, a rumor spread at his workplace that he had an affair with his son's wife, and he was reportedly looked at with disdain by his colleagues. Moreover, he was transferred to a less important position due to his misconduct, even though he only had a few years left until retirement. Not only did he lose his wife and son, but his job was also taken away. He seems to be typing on his keyboard with empty eyes every day as if he had lost the will to live. The ex-wife of my son also had to pay a big price. She was disowned by her parents and distanced by relatives who knew about the circumstances of her divorce. She, in her 30s, who has never worked properly, seems to be struggling with unfamiliar tasks at the only part-time job she managed to get. With no savings or income, she is now living in poverty, and rumors say she has become so destitute that there's hardly any trace of her old self. After cutting ties with the two, my son has been concentrating on his work, improving his performance even further, and it has been decided that he will go to an overseas branch. I was very happy about my son's great success. It's sad to be separated from him, but I want to fully support his life. I am still working as a nursing assistant. My colleagues who knew about my late life divorce spoke to me kindly and took me out to dinner saying it was a celebration. There were surprisingly many divorcees around me and everyone encouraged me saying, "You'll get through it." Surrounded by kind people, I feel truly blessed. Starting to live alone, I learned the pleasure of having a slightly better meal for myself and spending my holidays elegantly. Since I got married, I've spent more time on my husband than on myself. So it was actually a little delightful to be able to pamper myself like this. Sure, having a partner would probably be more fun, but right now I'm thoroughly satisfied because I'm having fun with my friends and my son. I can't help but enjoy just thinking about how to live my life from now on.